All right. Welcome, everyone. This episode 42 of the Truth Table. My name is Paul Everton, the host, and today's guest is Selgovae Pecht, and he has a lot of information to share with us. So we may have to do multiple shows. But he's the kind of man the government doesn't want anymore because they want all our boys in school to wear dresses and be little girls. And he's the type of man that cares enough about people to research and dig deep and get information, and he's willing to put his neck on the line to share that with us. He's a member of the Canadian Armed Forces. He was in the Royal Hamilton Light Infantry, uh, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, 3rd Battalion, the Royal Canadian Regiment. So, I mean, he's willing to put his life on the line. He's already proven that. I mean, just to be willing to die for your country is it says a lot in itself. But he's a very wise man, and I'm thankful that he came on to the show on the Truth Table. And I'm going to introduce you to him right after this. Welcome, everyone. Episode 43 of the Truth Table. Welcome, my guest, Selgovae. Thank you for coming on to the Truth Table.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the introduction too. Bang on all the history stuff.
Well, what compelled you to join the Canadian Armed Forces in the beginning? Like, what inspired you to do that?
One of my one of my role models and heroes growing up was my grandfather on my mother's side, and he served in the Second World War. He never told stories at all about it, but the way he carried himself was intentional and deliberate, and he was just a smart man. And at my age and phase in life at that time, and where we were as a nation and stuff like that, there wasn't a lot of employment opportunity or hope for somebody from my class of society. Uh, so it just seemed to me that it was a path that my grandfather took. He was where he was, so I should probably take the same steps, and that's why I went that route.
How do you feel about the country, Canada, right now? Do you think we've lost it? Do you
Yep.
think there's hope? Yeah.
Yep.
I'm kind of black pill too, you know.
Yeah.
If they can cheat in the elections, if they can lie and still stay in power, even though they got caught, I mean, that's my black pill right there. But I mean, they were willing to let you die, with because of your patriotism. They're willing to put your life on the line, but they don't want any more of you. They don't want the boys to be men anymore. So we're at the final stages of this Marxism, and you're considered the enemy at this point under
Mhm.
Marxism. You're the threat because of your patriotism. But you do care about your country like I do, right?
Absolutely. Well, I care about the people here and their access and awareness to their capacities in a moment in a matter, so that they can make the wisest decision in it. So, and what I'm talking about is one of the root reasons why I served was you ask people today what is freedom, and the answer is going to vary. It won't be a consistent answer out of people's mouths. Our freedom of our capacity as an individual, as part of the collective before the state, in a summary matter, is very, very key. And that overreach right now is that everybody's feeling in their lives, these masks being obligatory with backed up with fines and police chasing down young men skating on ice rinks while you can hire a hooker online openly in any town at any time and nobody cares. This environment was only able to take place as it did because I believe that it's been a slow removal of what the interpretation of freedom and common sense is. And
Yeah.
what this practically means, so most people can see it in a way that's obvious, is through some of the conduct from 2016 to now. In 2016, the policy on communications and federal identity was whipped up. And this is where the Treasury Board, you'll hear a lot of talks lately about division of government, separation of government. Well, in this case, the Treasury Board put an edict with conditions onto all offices that report to Parliament or are quasi-judicial in nature to remove the flag emblem from their correspondence and instead use only the shield. This is where the identity part becomes important because how you present determines the capacity in which you're in. And the state is obligated, the word freedom is to recognize your will in that. So they catch you in title.
Yeah.
I'd like to speak to you. And then the second that you acknowledge that, you consented to being in a limited capacity. And our children aren't aware of it. This is why they're distracting us. And the flag's been removed from the courtroom. So the judge, at the end of the day, the judge isn't bound. In the theater of representation, the representation of your Constitution was taken by edict of the Treasury Board in that policy. Remove
Great.
that symbol. And that puts a binding on the judge. And even if you bring one in, there's a position in that theater to where it has to be, behind the judge and uptight on the judge's right shoulder, left as you look at him. That is known as the position of honor, and it frames the judge. It puts him in his limit. If you remove that representation, there's no longer a binding to your inherent rights. There's a discretion under equity, which is the shield. The shield represents equity. So the equity binds the judge. This is why all mandates and acts and all of that were all perceived as being so omnipotent, is because that discretion, or not a discretion, that binding obligation upon the judge to recognize your capacity and your mustering to your will, even though your tongue didn't utter it correctly, because it wasn't shaped by you. It was shaped by an education system to participate in the system.
A lot of people don't understand this stuff, you know.
I know. And it's actually, it's intimidating to try to explain to people because to capture them is one thing without getting the eye roll, because then you immediately shut them off. Depending on the environment you're sitting in too, because if you're sitting in an environment that's biased to a civil process, they're not going to acknowledge this common process. They'll say it doesn't even exist. And to that, I simply refer people to Section 8.1 of the Interpretation Act of Canada in regard to property rights, where it speaks to two capacities of law. The common and civil process have equal authority of property rights. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms, just the term rights and freedoms, it's redundant to say the same thing twice. They're two different capacities. Rights are inherent. freedoms are negotiated. Everybody in convoy screaming freedom, they're trying to invoke greater capacity of choice within a limit, right? A limit within a limit, within a civil limit, as opposed to a limit under the recognizing the supremacy of God, individual rights.
Mm-hmm.
When you participate, so Paul, if you were on an island by yourself, you're a law unto yourself. There's no order for you to maintain because you have no communication with anything else. The birds don't speak your language, therefore they're under you as far as they're concerned until you die and then they eat you. But the second I come onto that island, we have to start negotiating. Shit over there because I sleep over here, pee over there, so we can have harmony, or else there's aggravation. So we come up with a unity and order. We limit our greater rights in order to live in cohabitation in that space.
Yep.
So this is the difference between those two capacities. Except when you talk about common law, people will argue, well, you can't just go out and do whatever you want, and that's absolutely true. You can't. If I go out and bring justice upon an individual arbitrarily on my own, for all intents and purposes, if they call the police and ask for help, they've immediately consented to being an agent of the state, and then the state's going to come and save them, and it's going to put judgment on me because I trespassed in their space, and I will have to speak to that. If it's a summary offense in nature, you don't have to speak to it. So that would be, I stand at their property line and scream a threat at their house. Not a threat per se, but I just scream at their house and they don't like it. I protest outside their house on public property. A trespass would be, I walk on their property, bang on the door, and they tell me to leave, and I don't, and I continue to bang on the door. They call the police come and arrest me for trespass, as they should. You see?
Mm-hmm.
But in a situation where I'm standing out on the sidewalk and the police come, all I have to say to the police is, am I under arrest? And they're going to say, no, we just want to talk to you. Well, that's because they're doing an investigation. They want to get you entitled, because the second they get you to consenting to being sir or mister, and you don't refute that, you silence as a consent, you're entitled, and they're going to grab you. And they're going to hit you with a summary mischief.
But yeah, we're tapping into the meanings of words too. When a judge asks you if you understand, he's not really asking you if you comprehend.
No.
He's trapping you.
Yes. They'll use the word informed a lot too, right? Informed and knowledgeable are two different capacities. So you've been given an information. You are informed. Well, all of that means is that you're information. So when the collective comes at you, you already have a force, a large and overwhelming force standing in front of you. You have to speak to that first agent correctly. If they refuse to listen to you, and there's times where they will, because they're just doing their job and their boss wants you to move in a protest type scenario.
Yeah.
Like being aware of how to go with that flow in order to retain your individual rights and capacity, because they're going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah.
There's a way to do that. And if you were to research and look at how lawyers are arrested, of all the video footage of when a lawyer or a judge or somebody that's in legal title gets arrested, they immediately go dead weight and they're dragged from wherever they go. And the reason why is because their will leaves their body in the moment. They're in duress. They're not making any decisions to their capacity. The only thing that they can do to retain that is to let their will leave their body. When a police officer is dealing with an individual like that's in that title, they expect that. They don't expect it from Joe Public. So when you're Joe Public and they come and touch you anyway, you should be saying, I'm going dead weight. And utter it so it gets on their body cam and audio. That is important because that means you're being passive at that point. You're a bag of water. Because they will try to use pressure point control tactics. It's like pinching a baby under the blanket to make it behave or punish it and no one else can see. They'll squeeze your fingers. They'll twist cuffs. They'll do all kinds of cheap shots to make you react and move. So that can be perceived as a resistance. And then they get to be rough with you. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to know how to speak, and perhaps I should tell your viewers a little bit about my background so that they can understand the context to how I speak about this stuff. Um, so I was a soldier for a number of years, and in 2002, immediately after September 11th, the nuclear industry recruited people from the military in order to begin a new tier of nuclear security and the infrastructure protection of Canada. And I was one of those individuals that was selected for that. In that journey, I was then selected again to become a member of what was called, created at the time, known as the Composite Adversary Team, known as CAT. And we would do threshold design testing on our infrastructure to assess its weaknesses and strengths, officer conduct, things like that, in order to create a hardening and an awareness to the type of threats that we would face, both internally and externally, foreign and domestic. Yeah. So when I talk about this language and the types of behaviors that you should adopt in it, it's through that lens that I advise that's the best way to go. Because, and I'm speaking of people in this times, like in relation to convoy, when you're on a line and you're being pushed by the police and all that exchange is going on, it's quite dynamic, and things can get interpreted really crazy. But if there's a standard protocol that people adopt because they're aware of their capacity, they're aware the matter's summary in nature, that they can save themselves a lot of legal grief if they're smart. And what was happening shortly after the convoy thing, I'm going to ask you to reflect on people's opinions when they were watching the SOGI and all the gender sort of protests, counter protests that was going on. And the optics were that the people on we'll call it the rainbow side or left or whatever, the side that was all on one side there, they seemed to get velvet gloves on everything. And the side that was considered on the right were abused by the protesters. The police didn't do nothing because it was generally summary in nature. And that rainbow side's been taught how to speak to this stuff. When you unpack and look at how they react and interact with the police, they're using correct language in capacity of reference. And another nuance to it, right? They can dead name themselves, which means they kill their legal identity and they create another one. It's called dead naming, and you lowercase your name, and that's a nuance that changes your capacity of rights as well. And that goalpost was moved unlawfully. That's a lot to unpack. I appreciate that, and I appreciate your patience let me get that out. But dead weight, so if it's summary in nature and they're going to grab you and they don't leave you alone when you resist title, am I under arrest? No, we just want to talk to you. The only reason they want to talk to you is because they're doing an investigation. They want to lure you into title. I don't want you, go away. I got nothing to say to you. And ignore them at that point. You don't have to listen to them. The second that they touch you, you're going for a ride. There's nothing you can do about it. The only thing you can do is stay in your capacity. And that's, I'm going dead weight, motherfucker. And you just drop it. And you're a bag of water. I'm a 6'4", 230-pound bag of water. And it's totally justified. You transfer 100% of your safety and liability for it on them.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're passive. You're not resisting. Your will has left your body. I'm dead weight and I'm peaceful. And they got to safely handle you from wherever they decided to put their hand on you to wherever the nearest vehicle is to the next location. And then when you get put into a cell, don't sign nothing. You refuse. Do not sign anything. Do not answer any questions. They're going to put you in a cell. And the second that slides, one time, one time and make sure they hear it. And it's better if you can make sure that the camera sees you utter it too, and use your hands so that it knows it can tell you're talking. And say, I would like a King James Version Bible now, please. And sit down. Don't bug them for it. You hope they don't bring it to you. When you get put in front of a justice of the peace, you say that you didn't give consent to being in any capacity for the summary matter. And you say that you were denied a process of law while in custody. It's like refusing your phone call to a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You wanted to research your standing and the capacity to which you wanted to take. And what you're showing up front is a mustering to that capacity. And good common sense on the judge's part, because it's a fundamental of justice that it is wrong to persecute the morally correct. Well, what defines that morality? Here,
Now we can ask.
and it rests on the ledger rests on the King James Version Bible, and the words in
Right.
Job 32:21. Let no flattering title be put upon man's person, not the person of men, but the individual's entity.
Now, can you question the judge and ask whether he will be using Black's Law English?
So this I've done all this stuff in court, and I'm still fighting, and it's been 4 years now on a summary matter. So this isn't easy.
Mm-hmm.
Because they removed that flag, it changes. And not only did they remove the flag, but in 2018 they repealed section 296.1 of the criminal code. Now that's the blasphemy libel. It used to be indictable and carried 2 years. And the reason why it was indictable is because all oaths to office, police oath, soldier's oath, all oaths have "so help me God" and to a constitution written under God of the King James Version Bible. Now, you are free to worship any way you want here in Canada within the moral standard under that constitution. And that's the nuance that is to be enshrined in that, and is the emblem of your nation. An emblem literally unpacks in Merriam-Webster's and also in Black's Law. Emblem is an identity, a representation of an identity, of an ideal. So that emblem of your nation was removed from the court with an intention to bind it summarily. That's the Coots boys did a trial with no flag in the court. And here's news. They talk about that young one fella that's in there and they bring in this association, like 30,000 rounds of ammunition, I think is what they said, that he had in a separate location. You go on Google right now and say in Canada, what's the lawful limit of ammunition anyone can own? Without a license, 225 kilograms. He didn't commit an offense. It's just thrown on to add color to the story in order to make you clutch pearls and be worried.
Yep.
The flag with no court. Tamara Litch, Barber's trial, no flag in their courtroom. And they know it. And they know it. Because I don't understand how Tamara can have a guitar with a Canadian flag on it, a book saying hold the line with a Canadian flag, wearing a shirt with a Canadian flag, hold the line, and sit in a court and then say nothing when it's not there in a summary mischief trial.
Yeah.
Right? Jeff
Evely,
a former regimental sergeant major, chief warrant officer in the infantry, he'd be considered a regimental sergeant major, but he was an Air Force guy, so he's known as a chief warrant officer. Or I think it's that, or I don't think there's a special one in the Air Force. I think it's chief warrant officer. Anyway, top-ranking non-commissioned guy, and the court-martial court configuration is clear, and even he's silent about it. This is frightening because every politician knows this case is present. All right. I've had one member of parliament when I told him almost a year ago, January of this year past, I said to him that this condition was present. And I had a hook set in him. And then he's like, "You're the first man in Canada that's brought this up." All right. So I'm telling you, people, it's up to the people. An accused sits in the courtroom and says, "The flag isn't there, and I have a problem with it." The judge, they're just going to shut him off. They're going to shut him down. They're not going to. The public has to care. The public has to walk into the courtroom physically and wait for the session to open, and because they notice it's not there, politely and in good candor, stand and say, "Excuse me, but before we judge our public, could you please explain to me why we don't have the emblem of our nation present to bind the decisions being made here?" They're going to ask you to go away, and that's fine. But you're going to make a statement. Just candorously walking in and doing that. We have an election coming, and they're worried we're catching on. Here's the thing: when you go to a courthouse, they'll do a search right at the doors. In Ontario, they're doing searches. Most of courthouses right at the doorway. Yep. What people don't realize is you limit yourself right there. You give up your presumption of innocence right there by consent. You're a thing past that point, and you consented to it. Sit back one time and just wait for a person in a three-piece suit and a briefcase that looks like a lawyer to walk right through, and they will. And then you go in, and when they stop you and say, "You said that individual did," and they say, "Well, they're a lawyer. They're an agent of the court." You can say, "Well, what about Section 15 of the Charter? All are to be seen as equal in the law." All. You see, when you walk in, because if you're going to walk in and say you're just going to self-represent, you're not even going to take the common law approach. You're going to do it legally, and you're going to self-represent and speak in the courtroom. When you do that search and that lawyer that opposes you don't, are you walking into a forum that sees you as equal and fair with them, with a same presumption as them? No, you don't. They thought you were going to shank them at the door.
Yeah.
So you see, your presumption of innocence it's just said. It doesn't, So when you debate a crown will be somebody that comes out, tries to, or a duty counsel will come out and try to talk to you about that and explain you around it. They'll say, there are rights enshrined for the person past this point. The key word that she said is the person. She didn't say there's human rights. She didn't say the man retains his full capacity past the point. She says there's rights retained for the person. A person is in a default limit, and that limit can move at the will of the state whenever they want, especially when they're not pounding nothing like a flag. You see, when I served in the Army and we set up a camp, we flew the Canadian flag for a reason beyond just our identity as a nation. It was everything that it represented. We were under that.
Yeah.
You see, we didn't fly a rag with the corporate shield on it. We'd been there under equity. They have flags with the corporate shield on it. We don't fly it there because we would have been there under equity, and that would have been a war crime.
So, even the truth table has a Canadian flag.
I saw that. And correctly placed too. I don't like the camera switches everything around, right? And that's another reason Zoom is never a good idea. Always go in person. Go physically and self-present, but in person is if you're going to self-represent. This prefix "re", people should be aware of that prefix "re", because it's very powerful, and we say it all the time, and we don't really properly consider it when we say it. Like research. What are we looking for? Something that's lost? Reserve. You live on a reserve. We're reserving you something. Indigenous. Right. We have people in this nation that were here first before the Roman consciousness through us came here. And we now have them convinced, right? We had them calling themselves Indian, then First Nation, then Aboriginal, and now the recent flavor is Indigenous. Indigenous means in full want and need. Indigent. in want and need. OUS is a suffix. The T gets dropped. The OUS gets put on top, and that's in fulsome capacity. In full covet.
Yeah.
Are you
Power
the
work.
master of anything if you're in full want and need? No, you're
Hmm.
not. And by your own utterance, you consent to being that, and your words will be used against you. And ignorance is no excuse, they say.
Yeah. And that's why this show is so important.
Yeah, because these nuances of knowledge that one of the things about me is I'm an Aries, so I'm a from the hip guy orally, and I don't like looking at fertilizer and calling it shit if it's shit and good for nothing but shit. And so a lot of the times people kind of take what I try to inform them offensively or the wrong way. They don't see, and that's my fault, right? I accept that. I'm fucked up that way, but um, this language is critical, and anybody that could take what I'm saying and articulate it in a more poetic and lulling way and set a precedent, fucking God love them, right? But right now, everybody's, I hear amongst what we'll call the freedom movement, a resounding urge for people to want to gather under, but nobody wants to gather under the one thing. They're having a hard time finding something to gather under. And I'm like, if you're going to wave that flag around on the side of the road with passion and be offended if someone takes it from you, why don't you give a shit? It's not in your courtroom where it has all its power.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't you going to your courts and saying, I care? Why isn't it there? That's a civil, that's a duty. That's a responsibility of Canadians to do that. They are fighting hard to distract us from that. All of this Palestine, Israel stuff, I don't agree with the life loss and as we see it in the media, and I think it's horrendous and horrific. And we're being fomented into a distraction right now, and it's we're fighting proxy wars on our nation under their flags.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a slippery slope we're on right now. I would feel better if those people were offended under a Canadian flag and under Canadian values. That to me, I would even participate in standing amongst them, because as Canadians, who we are, what's going on over there is offensive to everybody over there. As
Hmm.
Canadians, the lens is this is shitty over there, and
Yeah.
you fuckers need to figure it out,
I,
right?
I certainly don't like our money participating in it
I didn't like
financially.
it's going to the Ukraine, so
Yeah, that's another place. Yeah. But I
because
mean, Israel's crying about Hamas, but they're bombing Lebanon, Iraq, Syria,
yeah,
Iran. They're
and
bombing everybody.
they play us with that because while you get offended that we send weapons over there, they hold up the bodies of the poor blue collar individuals like us that are getting used as pawns in the middle of it. How can you refuse these people? And they all, it's like, how
Yeah,
can
our
you use that as an like? It's just it's a cycle of where do we draw a line? Where do
yeah,
we make a moral stand?
yeah.
And we just say no fucking corrupting past this fucking point, and the only direction we intend to go is your way, motherfucker.
We're certainly not being represented because these are things we would never do. We would never put poison in our food at the dinner table. You know, these ingredients they're putting in there. Now, Mexico tried to ban GMO corn from Monsanto's, and the U.S. is fighting back for Monsanto's, and who's owned by Bill Gates and Bayer, and Mexico showed proof of peer reviewed data showing that it wasn't good for you, and the farmers can't use the seed because there's no seeds. in Monsanto's food. So you have to rebuy the seeds every year instead of doing it the way we've been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. Reusing the seeds, allowing the seeds to evolve every year.
Hmm.
I love that. I save my cucumber seeds and I package them in flour and put them in an envelope in cool dark place, and I evolve them. So I allow them to grow naturally year by year. And Monsanto stops that. It stops the evolution of the food, which probably stunts our own evolution by stopping the evolution of food. I'm sure that the food is evolving with us, you know. So it's so Mexico at least is trying to stop it. I think RFK may actually do something about it as well, but it's definitely one of the issues we have. You address the law issue and the misuse of words, like Donald. Thanks for coming joining us, Donald. When we were talking about the gender, the word gender.
Yeah. So yeah,
And
the word gender. So it's two-part word, right? Gen and der. So gen is off the top of my head. It refers to a natural order of creation. To be born is the gen. The der is an agent noun. It takes what's before it and it turns it into an agent title.
Mhm.
Right? You have mankind, and you have human, right? And then we have genders. And after genders, we have woman or female. So woo, the prefix woo is a title. It's wife of man. Like anybody can be a woman. Because a man can consent himself to be the property of another man if he
Yeah,
wants.
yeah. But I
Right?
think in like caveman years, it was like, whoa, what's
Well,
that?
so the order of all of this is really rooted back in Mesopotamia.
Right.
So you got to go back to Mesopotamia, and you have to imagine a walled order named Akkad, because the word world means unity and order. It's not a rock in space. It is a description of an existence. It's a consciousness, and that unity and order is that limit. So in the walled garden that they lived in, they had a unity and order, and everything had its place and it was defined. Outside of that was chaotic and somewhat wild, and it kind of expanded and flooded out from there. So everything was born out of that. So the the story, King Sargon, who we know as the first civilization leader in
Hmm.
Mesopotamia, his eldest child, known as today as Enheduanna, and is the first author named individual in written history, which means they are the creator of their own name and the first name made. And it's through an application of a letter that they created, and it's above the figure 8 on your keyboard, and it's the asterisk, an 8-pointed star. And it's an adaptation to a previous Semitic script. So it's known as the double cross. It's 8 points, two crosses, one crossing the other. And the first double cross, and where man was turned to stone, where man's name was taken and etched with clay with a reed and marked into stone like Medusa. And
Yep.
then it's written into contract, and that possessed him and carried him into time.
Well,
And
Donald said something that reminds me of you. Lions do not bow.
there
100%.
are
100%.
no pacts between lions and men.
Well, yeah, to me, you're a lion. That's why I took to you right away. First time I saw you, I thought, "Oh my God, this
I'll
guy's
humble you.
amazing."
I'm more of a servant.
Seriously, I thought, "Wow."
I identify with the tribe of Dan. All right, so like my heraldry, my family rooted through the tribes out of Ireland, the Tuatha and on. The name Selgovae Pecht is an identity to the Selgovae tribe of the Picts.
Mhm.
What the Romans called us a pick, the painted ones, right?
But
You
your
have to,
time is now. Right now, everyone, the world is at the brink of extinction, and so what you have to say is has never been more valuable to empower people, and the use of words are so important. I did 2 or 3 shows on just about words and the meanings of words and the meanings of symbols,
yeah.
and and this started in the '90s with retranslating the Bible. That study, because I was felt compelled. I felt this doesn't feel right.
Well,
It
like
doesn't
the
go together. It says it
yeah.
doesn't go together because it says, "Let us make man in our image." So this is plural talk. This is not singular talk. So I went back. I went into it. I mean, I have all my studies right here. Oh, that's the Quran. Like the Quran, I got into that book,
Yes.
and that expanded everything else. The Gita expanded everything else. Like it just kept growing and growing. This, and I was hungry for it. And
Chapter
they all,
2 of the Gita, 29 through
oh,
40. That's my favorite stretch where Arjuna
I
was
love this book.
his
I have
order.
it marked here. My favorite part is it's a chapter. I think it's chapter 7, text 4, where it actually gives earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separate material energies. That's like God's
Yeah.
separate material energy. And that alone, that one verse, when it said water, it brought like Luke 17, where, the kingdom of heaven is not uh, seen, it is within you. So if God is water and we're mostly water, boom, it just brought it
Well,
all together for me. You see how beautiful that was for me? It was just amazing.
yeah. The creator's will. All right. Like the word God is so
It's
it's all
very
dictionary
complicated.
interpretation. So how far you want to Yahweh, Yahoo, Yahweh?
It's very complicated, definitely. But the Vatican has probably done the most disservice because I had to retranslate in order to figure out what was going on here.
Yeah, the Council of Nicaea, Saint Jerome, and all of
Yeah.
those interpretations. Yeah, and
But I
then when
mean,
you get into forward into George Churcino and John D era around Elizabeth I, it gets the letter J into the vowel shift, where all of a sudden this letter J pops up, and all these characters'
right.
names all get rephrased because they want us to say it a different way. It's so important to get us to
Exactly.
say these biblical names in a recreated representational manner than how they are.
Hmm. So this is my beginning of my research here. The first line in Hebrew, the first word, Rashith,
Yeah,
is
it
not,
does.
it's not in the beginning. In the beginning in Hebrew is Tachila. You see it
Yeah,
right there. So
yeah,
that's the actual. So there is a word for in the beginning, and it's not Rashith. Rashith means before. So it's like
yes.
before. And that's how
Without
the
looking
sentence
at the Hebrew
starts.
characters, like Resh is the head, so
Yeah.
it denotes a supremacy.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about the Hebrew into the Greek bleed, the drift from Hebrew
Mhm.
to Greek on the stories, they say that Dan is never mentioned in Revelations. Well, that's because you're not considering Revelations 1:8. I am the Alpha and the Omega. Well, in Hebrew, there is no fucking Omega. There's only 22 characters. That's the X. That's the cross.
Mhm.
X-22.
So
Yep.
yeah, fascinating stuff. But I
Aleph.
mean, I was I was like terrified
So
because of what I found out. Because I
this.
realized that the whole world has been lied to, and that's scary. Because this is like the most important topic
So we
that
haven't
we
been lied
know.
to it in a way, and this
Yeah,
is part of the trick. So it's a system. It's a system of morality that's been hidden by a curtain of allegory and
right.
illustrated through letters.
Yep.
And sifting through those letters and that curtain of allegory, and then to see the morality beyond it is the trick.
Hmm.
And again, so that will go back to that Revelations 1:8, Alpha and Omega. It's Aleph Tav. So like look at this word Tav now. In our English ish, right? Ish, kind of sort of, but not exact. In this language, we apply words like tavern. At a tavern, you drink spirits. And what is it involved?
Uh,
That's a tav and an urn of right? And tav
this guy's
backwards
up.
is a vat. If you read it like a fucking like a Hebrew, it's a vat, which where
It's
you hold
crazy.
water spirits in. So
Yeah.
when you apply then and consider it, it's like a pot, a clay empty vessel.
Yeah.
It's associated to a tribe that they want you to forget. Or and they demonize the tribe as well. Rome was incredibly threatened of these judges because they were the judges.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
Samson, oh, Achilles was as well of the Danoi, and the cultures all across the Mediterranean up to Ireland, Scotland, and even I argue your First Nations here, who we call the First Nations. You have tribes like the Dene, the Mandan. They all carry these hints of this consciousness connection, and it would be the travel of a script of a manner of order and unity that bled out of Mesopotamia and went that far.
Hmm.
Farther in New Zealand, there's the Waka Blondes, they're called, and the elder lady in the Waka Blondes in 2015 had her DNA done, traced her back to 3500 BC Mesopotamia. And all of her grandchildren are all blonde hair, blue eyed. They're a culture of pre Maori that were considered eaten into extinction by the Maori, but they weren't. They remained. Yeah, New Zealand Celts. So if you were to do some research on the New Zealand Picts or New Zealand Celts, they'll start talking about these fairy folk of New Zealand that made their way that far.
So you found traced back to the House of Dan,
Yeah,
the tribe.
through the Tuat and then on of the invasions of Ireland. So
Hmm.
my so the Selgovae is a an association of people that collected and became a tribe. What we were made up of were a tribe that was just chased north by the Romans, known as the Selgovae. And when they fled north, they commingled with Vikings who were supporting the Picts, or the Norse that were actually in allegiance with them, fighting off the Roman consciousness. This modern impression of Vikings coming in and raiding monasteries and pillaging and looting and taking off for no good reason other than just to steal. No, that was an act of war that was continuing to go on against the Roman consciousness, trying to push them back. Denmark,
Hmm.
right? Danish, the Danube. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard a guy talking about something about the women, the women in from Denmark. In what did you call that? The outfit, the metal. I don't know why I'm blanking out here. Uh, what was the outfit? The war outfit that they
The war,
wore.
the
Yeah,
war of
the
yeah,
metal suits, the metal.
armor.
Yeah, the armor that you just mentioned it. There's a name for it. But a guy was saying Oh, they all look like Johansson or what's her name, the pretty actress. They all look like this girl. Like, they're coming to invade us. I will wait on my bed and these rose petals.
Interesting.
The actress was the actress from oh God, something Johansson. Oh, I can't
Scarlett
even.
Johansson.
Scarlett Johansson. Yeah, they all look like Scarlett Johansson. They're coming in to invade us. I will wait on my bed with these rose petals. It was a comedian, but it's okay for
Well,
us to make light once in a while
the horned
because.
helmet has a pretty interesting history throughout all, like the Sardinians, um,
Mhm.
in Cyprus, they sported that helmet. The Vikings have been associated with it. This bull association, Mithras and Greeks,
That's
Gilgamesh.
the word. That's the word. Viking. That was the word I was looking for. It's not
Okay, yeah,
outfit.
Viking, yeah.
Yes, the Vikings from Denmark. They all look like Scarlett Johansson. So, have you also dug into different religions like Sumerian tablets or anything like that to
Oh, yeah, of
expand your
course.
knowledge? Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
go ahead.
yeah, me too as well. Um, I saw you posted a video on Mammon, God and Mammon.
Yeah, I was. He came up in a debate that I was having with a gentleman when I was on. I was unpacking. I can't remember what the word was. I think it was around the letter G, and he came on saying that Ma was the creator, and he started unpacking it and like maker and all these prefixes and suffixes and its use, and I said that's brilliant, but that, dial me in on where you're going with it. Who's this entity Ma, so that I can have some more clarity on who you're associating to. Like, are you saying Ma in relation to perhaps an Egyptian god of math, or and he then said Mammon, and then I realized that this individual is just trying to bait me in a debate. These characters are trying to suck us into contradictions, right? And
Right.
I seen that play take place, so I just unpacked it for him a bit afterwards. I can't remember exactly how it went. It was about a week ago. But yeah, that's how I came across a refresher study on that, and then I posted it after.
And
Uh,
it's weird. Like ever since I was a child, like I would never say Amen at the end of a prayer. I just didn't feel right because it was
mm,
like a foreign word. And then recently, not recently, but a couple decades back, Amun Ra, the Egyptian god, also known as Amun and Amun and Amun Ra. So it made sense to me at an older age why I didn't want to say that word. That somehow I was selling out my actual prayer
right.
to Amun. I was giving it to Amun instead of just making it simple. Like a indigenous way of praying is probably the safest, most effective way because you say Mother Mary and Jesus and Amen. You just say Creator. It's very specific. There's it's not complicated. It's the Creator of all, and I always end my prayers that way. And I uh, never ask for anything. I just thank you for this, thank you for that, thank you for the air, thank you for another day of life, thank you for my friendships. You know what I mean? That's all. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
How
I've
we
never.
feel and how we express are not always in unison. They may feel that
Mm,
way to you as an individual, but through a certain jurisdiction, it's not necessarily so.
mhm.
Um,
But that's where like the power of words. This is why I didn't want to say these words, but I was only a kid. There was no way I would have known that. It's like my instincts were always so spiritually in tune
so
and very young.
the creator of this world this unity and order that we use and apply, this language and utterance and expression that we put it on, right? From King Sargon, that star from his eldest, firstborn, loved first most more than any other, that he cast out of a god. Because that, who we now call Enheduanna, didn't obey his will. So let's look at that name, Enheduanna. Enduanna. En means in. Du, or he, is a masculine. Du is of, and Anna is a feminine. In he of Anna. Well, perhaps he refused to create an heir naturally and was kicked out of what would be considered heaven, that walled city. That fallen star was cast out. And then went amongst and spread that knowledge. And a great revolution followed. And a scattering of that knowledge took place. And all of a sudden, 1,000 Ways to Skin a Cat took place. 72. You see, the stories all overlay and they parallel, but that allegory is a kicker for people to try to make those connections when you overlay those stories. So when you ask me about whether I followed, like I did research on Sumerians and all that, and the Irish and the Celtic legends and all those pantheons, they all neatly overlay. They all have floods. They all have characters that are very, very similar.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so,
that's what I noticed.
Like, Jesus was hanged on a cross. Lugalzagzi was taken back to Nippur on a plowshare. A beast of burden. Jesus rode in on a donkey.
Yep. And the Egyptian gods, Isis and...
Yeah, Thoth, the writing god, who brought writing to Egypt. Thoth, the Anzu, the bird who stole the tablets of knowledge.
Yeah, and the Emerald Tablets say that Jesus went to Egypt to learn under Thoth teachings, basically.
What I found really interesting, I discovered, I was looking at Sumerian reliefs online. And I was just looking for some kind of interpretation I could discover. And there's a picture of a Sumerian king. His head's shaved, bald. He's in his those feathered skirts that they would make out of the feathers, like the Kiwis in New Zealand would wear the same type of skirt. The Aboriginals.
I knew.
Yeah. And he's sitting on a chair. So he's sitting on this chair, and it has 4 legs. One of the 4 legs is shaped like an ox's leg.
Interesting.
Like deliberately fashioned with hair and a hoof, and then 3 other normal legs. So then you look at this word, religion. Relig, ion. Lig is a binding. Ion. Crux, I fix. Crucifix. Crux, I fix. Crux is a post or standard. I fix. The leg of the bull of heaven got ripped off, right? Thrown at Ishtar's feet. Yeah. So these symbols that carry on, like your running of the bull, they're all connected to a root source of morality and consciousness. It all blossomed out of that. So when a jurisdiction is put on us, in order for them to have standing, they interpret through that line. Graft to graft to graft to graft to graft. It's the only way it would make sense. You can't build in the ether. You got to start on a foundation, and you got to build off of it. And then all your truth from that point forward, like, so they say in civil processes, everything's on precedent. What's the seed and origin of all precedent? If you can tell me with certainty that everything's based on precedent, and certainly you know the seed and where it's from.
Exactly.
It's based on a moral code.
Right.
Which is common sense. Yes. Yeah. So this is where
they deliberately made everything complicated. They made it so you have to look everywhere. to get the
Coming back
answer.
to Earth though for a second here, if you really want to stump a police officer who's trying to press on you in a summary matter, and you know it's a summary matter, simply ask them this: tell me what your oath is. They're either going to refuse, which works for you, or they're going to say, I don't know. Doesn't matter. Well, first of all, they can't refuse. They have to demonstrate. If you intend to use my words against me, how do I know you know the words that you're limited to? You don't get just to fucking brush that off. Open up your notebook and read it to me. It's written in your fucking notebook cover. They want to avoid acknowledging to you that they took an oath to your Constitution.
Yeah.
They're trying to evade that acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as they acknowledge that they've taken an oath to the Constitution, they have to, because their words will be used against them as well.
Yep.
Acknowledge your capacity that you're mustering to in the moment, if done correctly, and you're not falling for the sirs and misters and all that shit. You just simply, am I under arrest? No. Have a good day. There's a fentanyl dealer to find. Beat it. Yeah.
I told you we're gonna have to do more than one show.
Have we cooked your clock up?
No.
Okay.
No. We don't have any limit, really.
I can go and go and go.
Yeah, well, this is good. What we're doing is we're really empowering people by just letting them know these very important things, because they can stop the video, they can pause it, they can share it, they can rewind it, write things down, because all of this is so important right now to empower our brothers and sisters out there that have no idea how trapped they are. Even just by
how easy it is to change. If there was ever a moment, and I've been trying to get people to go to the courtrooms as public, as individuals, you don't need a herd of 50 people. You don't need to be part of a massive pack. This is an individual care. This is an individual responsibility and duty. If you can't stand for our nation against the tide of the world, you don't deserve to fucking be here, and all this is. That's fucking just that simple. As far as I'm concerned, from the position that I've lived in my life, like that, you know what I mean? Like, and it's sad too, because I'm a veteran. I receive veterans benefits. And when I took a second look at the terms and conditions that they just present in front of me in your despair, where you're beat up, demoralized, you're fucking desperate. Oh yeah, we're here to help you and all this stuff. And they're just sign here, and here's the terms and conditions. Just click right there. They don't explain to you that you're actually clicking off on that policy of communications and federal identity. So my oath that I took as a soldier, I was asked to break it in order to keep putting food on my table. And I'm pissed off about that when I found it. I'm really mad about it. And this is a hard thing for a lot of the vet guys to acknowledge. First of all, that they did that, because I don't believe any of them would knowingly do it, and I mean that. But here, you've watched the show, and now you know. So
that's why we're here.
So you got to go to a courtroom. You got to go into the court. You got to sit as a candorous, correct public, and realize you're in that capacity when you're sitting there. You don't get to be chirpy and saucy. Just respectfully, before, when the record's open, the judges open the record, stand and put your hand up and say, as an observer, I would just like to ask, why is there not an emblem of our nation to bind your decisions on the people we're going to try today, in respect for their rights? I, as a member of the public, have concern about this, that we're judging our peers in such a way. They're going to tell you to leave. Accept that and leave in good candor, and then write a member of parliament, write an MPP, make a Facebook post about it, tell as many people and inspire as many other people to do it. Because as soon as people start doing it, you don't got to drive and be part of a 250,000 pack in Ottawa to make this impact. If we do it across the nation at every courthouse, even over a period of a couple weeks, they will shit their pants. The courts will shit their fucking pants. just that you care. You don't have to fucking come in there burning torches and screaming and hollering, or even bouncy castles out front. Just the fact that they realize the cat's out of the bag, they will shit their pants. They have to live amongst us. They have to look you in the face.
Now that you said that, I can't believe what happened in Ottawa and how it was like a insurrection. Meanwhile, this is okay. This is okay now.
Right.
There's no emergency act going on now.
Yeah.
But these are our government's people. These are the guys that running Syria right now. These are our guys. We paid for them. That's and their flags are fine. It's just we've been betrayed so in our face.
I want to make a certain disclosure here because I have a lens to things that a lot of people don't. Some do. I won't take that away from them, but majority don't.
I would agree. I agree.
So a friend of mine ran a relief group for the Yazidi people, because, and particularly for Yazidi boys, because you see during the Iraq War, when they were attacking these people, because they're also origins of Dan and part of a genocide. There's an active genocide that's been going on for a long time. So these Yazidi women and boys were sought after because they have blonde hair and green eyes and blue eyes, and they use them in the slave market. And the young boys would be forced to, well, they'd be conditioned by watching horrific things take place to their family and neighbors, and in cases participate in it to harden them up. And while the rest of the world watched this happen to them and their family, their concept is fuck the world. And these people that we just kind of turned the channel because it was convenient then, these young men who were at the time 12, they're now fucking 20 and pissed off. I find it through my lens hard to not have a degree of consideration towards that.
Yeah, I would agree.
My judgment that I have that maybe appear revolting, that's this flag waving and all that in our nation is taking place in our soil. At the same time, we have to not forget that, the Markets massacre in Gandhi's time that was done in India, they slaughtered 300 people with machine gun fire that were unarmed in a market. They were throwing their children down a well to save them.
No, I don't have a problem with people protesting on behalf of the Palestinians. I don't consider that terrorism or anything, because I think what's happening to the Palestinians is horrible. These are Semitic people, and meanwhile Israel is saying if you're against them bombing Palestinians, then you're anti-Semitic. But really, bombing Gaza is anti-Semitic. So this is a misuse of words, again, projecting, because they're actually killing Semitic people.
The language that we use is not parallel to the situation we're told it is. The word Semitic. Se means apart. Mit means to send. Ik means of. What that unpacks as is representation of.
Yeah, and it's just a language.
To be against a sort of truth as opposed to being allied to the truth.
Yeah.
They got us saying one thing in a situation that's horrific and parallel, where our emotion gets pulled in it, but how they apply that interpretation against us.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's simple. Thou shalt not kill. Don't kill. I don't care if they're Semitic or not.
Right.
Carpet bombing, they're basically in prison. They've got gates, walls built around them, and Israel controls their water supply, how much water they can have. And I mean, they're in prison, open air. There's no doubt in my mind. But to carpet bomb and then making plans for, rebuilding, I mean, telling them to go somewhere where it's, saying this place is safe and then bombing it. bombing the hospitals. I mean, it is the most horrible thing I've ever seen
Are
in
you
my lifetime
are you
to these
familiar
people.
with are you familiar with the deal that was made between Byzantine and Khazaria in the 6th century? Are you aware of that?
Do I really
Basically,
look that old? Sorry.
no. Well, because when people start talking about designations of faith, so like this word Jew, for example,
Khazarian, yeah. Khazarian mafia,
yeah,
yes.
letter J wasn't invented until 1524.
Yep, yep.
W wasn't invented until the 1700s.
Hmm.
All right, so it's not that. This when you read the Bible and it says King of the Jews and the Romans threw a crown on his head, that word didn't even exist then. It wasn't even an utterance then. The letter didn't exist. So we're being told something is something else to hide a truth. So when you consider the Constitution's recognizing the supremacy of God and then the rule of law, they're murkying the waters on the supremacy of God side as much as they fucking can when they apply their jurisdiction so that they lock you into that limited civil capacity. Like, does that make sense? Why
100%.
point that out? Yeah.
Kirk says hi.
Hey,
Hi,
bro.
it's our brother Kirk. He's eating better than me. His
I
wife is
know.
showing the meals that she's cooking up for him.
Fucking dancing plates of food across the boat to him. Yeah.
But yeah, the history is told by the victors. And it's up to us to really unravel the truth and find the truth, share the truth, and hopefully one day we'll be able to destroy the history books that are lying to us. Because
We're
really, mankind deserves the truth.
we're discovering a lot of things through what we're going through right now. Like
Yeah,
it's all of this stuff that they're doing to us. The only reason they're doing it is because we got that sleepy and that lazy, and they thought they could get away with it. Now people are starting to wake up. So this stuff that I'm talking about tonight, maybe 20% of your viewers will connect with it. Maybe the rest will think I'm a nutcase. But I can promise you, 5 years ago, I was a complete nutcase to 100% of the people that I spoke to. So,
mhm. Yeah. Well, I saw through that. I saw
yeah.
through that, and I knew people would see it that way. But it just didn't matter because I didn't. Because I knew the more I learned in my research, the more I knew people would think I was crazy. I also knew my life would be in danger if if I had enough followers or enough people that knew what was going on, then I would be in danger because I
Well,
know, like when you learn certain things, you know it's dangerous. You know it's a hot potato. You know when it's dangerous and when it isn't. You know,
Paul, look at
and I
that
think
snatch that they did on me in Ottawa. 250,000 people. I got pulled with a 3 or 4 jurisdictional force just for me. At the same time, Pat King was getting grabbed. The exact same time. I had 3 SWAT teams and a CSIS unit on me, and Pat gets a roadside cop knocking on his window. Ding, ding, ding. 1 second, I gotta finish my live and call my lawyer. I was spitting out auto bus, and then driven like Hannibal Lecter. They did not want me there. They did not want me there, and it was funny when I watched before Christmas Larry Brock stand and talk about the legal opinion that's all redacted because of a corporate entities that had an influence into the Emergency Measures Act. I worked in the nuclear industry, as I said, right? 30% of the province's power. And I got an active federal human rights case against them. And they do not want me influencing people on the systemic, what I claim is systemic human rights abuse done by the world's largest nuclear power plant here in Canada to its staff.
hmm,
And it's been a long gauntlet, bro. A long gauntlet. Like every time I go to court, they got an emergency response team just for me in there. And they stand all around me and intimidate me every time I go in there. Like, not fun.
but this is why you have so much value in my eyes because there are so many different things that are so important to people, for Canadians to understand what's going on, and you have the capacity to give it to them straight, so they're empowered. They because otherwise they would never know. No one would tell them. Their church isn't going to tell them. Their politicians aren't going to tell them. Their friends aren't even going to know.
Yeah. If you're going
If,
to an event, a public speaking event, and you believe that there's a chance you might get arrested just because you're there, there's a slim chance. Have a plan before you go. Have a plan. If I get arrested, this is an emergency contact. This is where this money's here. This money's there. This key's there. These are my passwords. This is my preferred fucking lawyer. Somebody with a landline, you want to make sure that you got like somebody that has a landline. You want to know, memorize their fucking number and have an agreement with them. If they ever get this is a collect call from Her Majesty's, that they fucking take that fucking call. You have that. Just it sounds complicated, but it's not. Just have a simple plan. If you get grabbed, at least you know
yeah,
that there's some parts that are moving when you're isolated. Because if you're not ready for that, when they take your liberty away, and 90% of the people, I'm sure, weren't when it happened to them. And it's one thing to feel like you're going to be ready. It is eviscerating and demoralizing when you're shackled up and a door closes and the realization hits. You don't know. Like, you got to ask for everything. Glass of water, fucking, like, that's a humbling reality that hits you in that moment. And if you're not prepared and mentally aware that things are happening and already prepared for that, you're going to make better decisions if you're ready for that. Because this
yeah,
is where they get you. In a summary matter, this is where they catch you entitled. You'll say anything to get out of there. You know, if you haven't gone through that before, I'm not talking about hardened criminals, rounders, gangbangers, and all these people that go through this as a matter of routine in life. Your average good-hearted Canadian that's going to these events never really kind of go into things expecting that to happen to them or imagining it, and it does. And when it does, having having a plan removes the panic.
yeah.
I have
It didn't.
PTSD, dude. If I didn't have a plan when I walked into half the shit I fucking move around in, or at least some kind of idea of what I'm walking into,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be unhinged. Like,
So they didn't like that you supported the trucking convoy.
no, no, no. But I think they had me in a bubble of control anyway. I think I was I was under monitoring, and I wasn't supposed to know that I was under being monitored.
Yeah,
I felt that throughout, so I just took it as it was. I wasn't doing anything wrong.
but that's what
So
I think they do in the States too. Is when veterans that come home from war, they really consider them enemies, potential enemies, but they consider them a danger.
they're a threat because basically
Training.
uh, inoculation to adversary stuff, the
Yeah.
ability to take a certain amount of fucking getting fucked over, and it's beyond a majority of civilians. I'm not going to say all. There's some pretty
Yeah.
hard cities out
Yeah.
there, man. But a majority of civilians, they're not conditioned to be able to think their way through that, or so they're harder targets, and that means it costs more and it's more inconvenient, and you run a greater risk of looking like you're the adversary when you try to control them because they can stand longer that way, right?
Hmm.
It's not like walking in, snatching somebody up, and just walking them away. What the hell just happened there? I don't know. Where a veteran's actually entering a dialogue and exchanging with them and standing in their ground on certain values, and then raising a whole fucking cell phones are out, people are filming, right? They don't like that. They don't like people that can do that. They'll look
Yeah.
good.
Well, I don't know what we would do without people like you, in case we get another, we get another issue, like a bird mates with a pig or something and causes a new virus.
Roles of a veteran, your service doesn't stop at service. Honestly, I believe that one of the roles of the veteran is you maintain the watch, man. You maintain the standard. Like you enter this elder phase where younger soldiers perhaps ask your opinion on stuff. They might tell you to go pound salt, dusty old fart. They might say that too, but our role is to keep things consistent.
Yeah.
You know?
Really protecting the country. I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of how you get into it in the first place. Same as Kirk Reese. He went in the same way for the same reason, as a
Well, it's
ranger.
like one of my roles there when I said as a composite adversary, I was a composite adversary team. It was one of Canada's first, and then not long after that, a couple of years after that, I left the security and I moved into scaffolding. So
Mm-hmm.
when these charges came up on me in reprisal for my human rights complaint, because that's what all those criminal charges were that they threw at me was reprisal. When I did it ultimately after 3 years, I got a lawyer. I self-represented for 3 years, and then when I realized that the judge was protecting his son, who's the director of my work group, and I didn't know that until after I was convicted, then I lawyered up. So where was I going with that? I was going somewhere with that, and I sometimes drift. Um, the fuck ball. Sorry, man. I just bring me back, or we'll move on. I tried to highlight about the judge and his son, and I lost myself.
Yeah, well, you went into it with the intent of protecting the country, and that's what that's what you did.
Oh
You
yeah, yeah,
trained,
yeah, yeah.
you trained, and you believed in your cause. No one does it unless they appreciate mankind. They see the good in people, that people are worth dying for. The only problem is, I believe we've been captured. It's
Well,
like
so this
if you were to fight in a war, you would be fighting. We would be the bad guy.
that's
You'd
why
be
I'm
dying.
pressing the flag matter
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
believe that the crown no longer has its authority. I believe it's all just pure de facto right now, and we're just like I here's why. 2016, Aaron O'Toole's pitching in Parliament a new trade agreement called CANZUK amongst the Commonwealth. Let me say that again. The Commonwealth. Why would we need a trade agreement for an organization that's already calling itself the Commonwealth, for fuck's sake? It doesn't
yeah,
make any sense.
yeah,
Unless there's no longer a Commonwealth then, or imminently to be. And so I think the Queen's days was numbered either then or already done then. So as we move forward, all of this new policy on communications and federal identity gets drafted. Supremacy of God gets ripped out by Jody Wilson-Raybould. All right, she's the one who
yeah,
signed off both that policy on communications and federal identity, and she signed off on the creation of the repeal to remove the supremacy of God from our Constitution. She's a signatory to it. She drafted in on it. All right, so she's not this big, savior that got abused by Trudeau. She played a role. She ran a
yeah.
ball in the field a certain distance, and then she dropped it and got pulled out under certain conditions. It seems like she's being set up to maybe reappear in the future and continue what she started. I'm not very happy with that. So we
I
didn't
think,
see any
yeah.
of that. We didn't see any of that coming, and
and
nobody's speaking about it. No
and
church.
Polyev, I think, is a smooth talker too. I think he's also one of those Manchurians.
Well, so one of the things where I was going is if the Commonwealth's gone and we start bugging about this flag, and that flag is what links us to it, right? It's the Queen's proclamation that brought it into existence.
Yeah, yeah,
Then we force the politicians to either acknowledge that it's not fucking there or to promise to bring it back into the courtroom. If they'll do neither, then you already know we're up for grabs.
yeah,
And then the progressive conservatives and their common sense repetition, and their members standing in the house and actually reading from the Bible, or quoting, actually preaching, is reinforcements to. I take that as a signal of where they want to stand going forward, and the other ones aren't speaking to it. Derek Noonan's got Charlie Angus back 3 months ago, giving him the devil horns as he walked across intentionally, healthy as he walked by him on Wellington Street. Just like
I wonder if that's them trying to be cool and not realizing what they're doing, or realizing what they're doing.
he's the son of a priest.
Oh, yeah, so he would know.
Yeah, his old man's a fucking. I'm pretty sure he's a Jesuit.
Oh, good
Yeah,
God.
but he's definitely a priest. His father's a man of the cloth.
Hmm.
Charlie Angus's father's a man of the cloth.
Well, I think we could do a whole show just on religion, to be honest with you, and one just on politics, and one just on the flag and the courtrooms. So there's 3 shows right there.
The flag in the courtroom's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
It's the weakest. My assessment of the most peaceful way to make an impact is if the nation could get sparked, the people just walk into the nearest courtroom to them. Oh, today let's just drive down to the courthouse and just show up. Whether you make it in the morning, you make it in lunch. Who fucking just show up? And when session starts, or after a recess and a break, hey, I just got here. I just want to know where's the flag. Get out of my courtroom. Leave. Someone else come back, do it the next day. Maybe somebody already did it that morning. Perfect.
Yeah,
That's what we want, that flow of people walking in the court. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? We care. We care. We care. We realize that we are not being treated the way we were a few years ago. And we don't like it.
It's like they were sneaky to remove.
Absolutely. Fuck yeah, man. There's no way you'd accept that if they told you what they're going to do. There's no way.
And what it actually means for Canada. How it has removed power and sovereignty and our rights. Yeah. But so, are you black pilled?
Define this black pill. What is black pill?
Black pill means there's no hope.
Oh no, I'm not black pilled.
Okay, that's good. That's good to hear.
No, I'm
so
not.
You do believe? You do believe there's hope?
I do. I believe. Well, first of all, I think that anything that we're seeing in the media is simply signaling we're in a movie. The outcome's already fucking determined. These people chalkboard, whiteboard these plans out. They work in 250-year blocks. It is what it is. All right. Our population was predicted 50 years ago where we would be.
See, and that's why I feel black pilled, because it's all pre-arranged, pre-done. We're being set up, and they took mother off the birth certificate.
How many planning tables have you sat around? How many planning tables have you sat around where everybody agreed 100% of the time?
No, that's true. That's true. But I do appreciate debate and disagreement, because that gives me an open. It allows us to at least consider different possibilities. I mean, umbrella works best when it's open, like the mind.
There's a dimension of society that lives in plain sight amongst us, and some of us don't know it's there.
Now, what do you being in the military? What do you think about this fog thing that happened? Because I got sick.
Yeah, it's.
Do you think that's?
Well, there's a patent that says there's nanotech in it. Like there's a fog. There's a patent for a fog that can contain nanotech. I know for certain that if you go to the dentist and get teeth whitening now, there's nanotech in that. So you're getting nanotech, and the thing about your teeth is it's correct. It's close to sensors of your nerves to your brain, right?
Yeah.
Lucille Ball, they figured that out. Lucille Ball in World War II was getting Japanese fucking sub signals when she was driving around on the LA coast. Yeah, look it up. She talked about it.
Oh my God. I didn't know that.
She talks about it. It was a discovery. Yeah.
I never heard about that. That's crazy.
So if they become aware that they can trigger you in some way, manipulate you neurally in some way through that, then they will. And And whether we jabbed or not, if this fog shit's real, there's now a layer of it, a micro layer of it in the entirety of fucking the planet right now.
Hmm.
So what are we gonna do?
And
You
the
know,
mRNA technology.
I find it scary because when this, particularly with the people that are jabbed, if the mRNA stuff is true about the jab, and everybody now has a Bluetooth signature and with these
Yeah.
drone tech, right?
Yeah.
Like they could just find you.
Yeah.
You'll be sitting
And
there getting anything. It could
yeah,
be a summons. It could be an assassination. Who fucking knows?
they can find you in a group of 1,000 people. They can
Well, they did to
pinpoint,
me in Ottawa, and I don't got anything. All I had on me was a cell phone,
and there
and
was
that
a
was
lot of people there.
we were driving, and we were driving. We were mobile when that happened. And
Wow.
the girl sitting in the driver's seat in front of me, her phone rang first. I'm already looking everywhere. I'm not. I already know I'm in a vehicle I'm not supposed to be in. I was tried to be influenced to be in another vehicle. I didn't take the bait, and I went into a different vehicle. And fucked
Oh,
her.
wow.
So the girl that was driving, her cell phone rings, and she goes, "Unknown name, unknown number. Who the fuck is doing that?" Now I was always kind of suspicious of her anyway, so I sat my ass right behind her. And I said, they just want to know where I'm sitting. Their phones are too close. They don't know if I'm driving this fucking car or not. He goes, oh, get over yourself, Jay. And I look over on the screen. There's a filter screen that's up, like a visor screen in the back window, and I want to be seen. I do not want to be not seen. I'm fucking trying to get this fucking thing undone. Finally, I get the window down, and she's put the window back up. It's like, fuck, and I just went, and I looked it up, and my buddy who drove up with me, he was on the other side of an individual between us. I looked at him because he's seen me get grabbed before. I said, they just don't get it, do they, Len? And he said, no, they don't. Sometimes these guys just come out of the sky like deer. And I remember, like, deer? What the fuck is that? That seemed weird to me. He was reaching for
Yeah.
something, I guess. But no sooner did he say that, all our cell phones rang. Her cell phone
Oh,
rang, and then all of our cell phones rang. And when I was like this, I literally just went like this. A sprinter pulled up the side. They jumped up, blew out the window, fucking hands, all that shit. And then you got the video. You seen that? It's me getting dragged out away. They brought me. They brought me instantly. They brought me to a public pump house or warehouse number 6. It's a brick building. They weren't ready for me there. They took me to Ottawa detention. They weren't ready for me there. So then these Frenchies, they're Gatineau police guys. The guy gets in and he's all mad. And one guy's his nickname was Daffy. And his SD out. I was like, well, you can just let me out here. Well, if they don't take you in the next place, SD, we're gonna. I was like, right on. So and then we went back to the pump house. Then they took me in, big fucking around in there. They made 3 buses of people wait outside while they dealt with me. I was in there for about an hour. And then they took me back to the Ottawa Detention Center. Then they were ready for me. Walked me through tons of empty cells. Every cell was fucking empty in the whole fucking place. Second to last cell's got Pat King sitting in it. Hey, Pat. And sit me in the cell next to him. Last time I saw you was at Peterburger, Pat. I wish I sure could go for a Peterburger now. Right after he said that, the fucking guard came around and said, okay, you're right. It's your time to go. I was perp walked. I was perp walked in front of Pat King. He did one of these, and fucking I was taken away. You know him? Oh, I don't know. And fucking I was taken away. And then I went for a drive in a blizzard down the 401 with 2 OPP ERT guys as escort. And they drove me and handed me off to another ERT crew halfway down the highway. Closed out highway. Trucks in the ditch everywhere. The fucking drive in hindsight was scarier than the arrest. Honestly, there was more risk of. It was scary when they put the guns up. I don't know what anybody else in this car, what kind of reaction they're gonna have. And everybody's got a barrel. Every barrel looked this fucking big in front of my face. I was just, fingers were not off the trigger. Like, so
crazy.
yeah, it was perfect though. Like when they did that cell phone trick, that's wild, man. I like that. Everybody's like this. Your cell phone's in front of your face. Put your hands on your head. Dang, it's pointing to the sky. As soon as they got everything, man. They got full
I bet
control.
you they love using that tech. They
Oh
just love
yeah.
being intimidating. The CSIS guys.
Well, I've been asked by people that I've kind of functioned with in Ontario, and that everybody's acting all sneaky peeky, and they got to be like cloak and dagger,
Yeah.
I'm just like, dude, I'm not going to play that game.
Hmm.
Like, I don't want to I don't want to play this fucking game. Like, why are we being so austere? That's going to bring heat. That's going to bring all kinds of fucking. You leave blank spots, they're going to fill them in with whatever the fuck they feel like filling it in.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
be open, Trent. You're not doing anything unlawful. Make them
Mhm.
cringe at the fact that they're going to have to police you from doing something you're completely entitled and lawful to do.
Yep. Yep.
You want to prove there's a tyrant present? Make them be a tyrant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Demonstrate it.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's so much that we could cover, but we could probably stop this particular version. I hope you do come back.
Yeah, for sure, man. It was a nice warm up. Like part one warm up,
Yeah.
kind of see the vast, broad ideas scape onto people, and then narrow in on it as we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Like all these little tips are going to help when people do go to court. They'll look to see if there's a flag, and they may not have done it. You know,
Well, the
otherwise,
goal is to avoid even getting into a courtroom in a summary matter.
yeah.
It's summary in nature, and you know that off the bat.
Hmm.
Then it's just, am I under arrest? No, we just want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to you, and I owe you no duty. You owe the government no duty. Do we have a voluntary army? Yes, we do. That's proof that we don't owe the government no duty. If we owed the government duty, we'd have conscription. We don't. That's
Hmm.
because you're fucking free to choose in your participation. In this country we call Canada, think of it as a garden.
Hmm.
And the fruit is produced from the fertilizer, and the fertilizer is how we consent. And if the fruit that we're sustaining ourselves with is tough and shitty in taste, it's because we're we're putting the wrong shit on it. We're consenting incorrectly.
Yeah.
We're we're participating in it wrong. It's
Do I have
designed,
one?
yeah, it's designed so that we can refuse stuff, and that only good comes from it.
Mhm. And I do appreciate your time, Selgovae.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to find you, they can find you on Facebook
Yep.
on my friends list. I don't know if you have YouTube and Rumble or anything like that,
No.
but this is Facebook Live, so please like and share, and um, especially if you know someone that's going to be dealing with the courts or someone who's trying to help their fellow man. Share this with them so that they can be empowered and join us for our follow up shows. I think we might have 10
Cool.
because there's so much information and we don't want to put too much in one show because we don't want to overwhelm you, but we do want to try to stay focused. Like we may talk about religion on another show, and we may talk about history in another show. Things that matter to both of us, and we hope that you join us at that time. This is episode 43, so I'm up to 43 now. So I'm really moving along here, right? I think Kirk Reese had about 4 shows, but
Good.
thank you all for joining us. Any last words, Salgave?
No, just words. Know your words, and when the cop walks up to you, if summary in nature, and you're gonna know right away. You just, am I under arrest? No, we just want to tell them to beat it, and there's nothing to say, and they'll walk away. And then if they don't, you know what to do thereafter. And we'll touch on it again on other shows as we go along, as it seems. But I appreciate everybody's patience. I might be hard to follow sometimes. So I appreciate anybody who's soldiered on through this and got this far into it.
No, I think you were very clear, and I think we did it right. We did it good, And I thank you so much. I can't wait till our next show. And I hope you have a great night. And thank you all for joining us at home. And thank you, Selgovae. I,
Thank you.
I'm honored to have you on the show. Thanks for coming.
Likewise. Thanks.